There have been many women who have played an important role in New Jersey's history. When it comes to the history of New Jersey's legal system, few have had the far-reaching impact of Supreme Court Associate Justice Murray Garibaldi. Justice Garibaldi was the first woman to serve on New Jersey's highest court. She was also the first woman to serve as president of the New Jersey State Bar Association, the state's largest professional organization for attorneys. In both of these roles, she not only forged a path for women in the legal profession, she changed the system itself to further the case of justice for all of us.
I think that she was a role model. She was generous and gracious, but down to earth. She remembered people's birthdays. She worried about her law clerks and what jobs they were able to get. She cared deeply about the law, and she worked hard.
I clerked for her shortly after I graduated from law school, and it was an incredibly wonderful year to spend with her. She was a delightful person to be around, smart, calm. She educated me about the law, about lawyering, about government, how it works, and about public service. She really opened my eyes to the idea of working for the Attorney General's office, which I did after my clerkship, based on her advice that it would be a place where I could learn a lot, learn to be a good lawyer, and serve the public purpose.
Not only did she put me at ease in terms of giving me a little bit of guidance in terms of how to comport myself and what things I could expect as someone who was a recent appointee, but she also really made me feel that I could probably do what I was now being tasked to do. And the reason I say that is because we had such a lovely conversation about how women were making strides in the legal profession, making strides in the judiciary, that as part of our position as a superior court judge, we were the face of women to a lot of people in our court system. And she felt very strongly about that in terms of how she projected that image in her role as a justice on the Supreme Court.
When I started out, I was trying to figure out exactly what time I should arrive to work. So I would take the New Jersey Transit train up, and I first started coming in around 8:30, and she was there. And then I came in around 8 o'clock, and she was there. Every time I'd come in, she'd already read about 2 or 3 newspapers, had read numerous briefs, and was already deeply into her work. I think I gave up after one day I came in at 6:45, and she was still there. So
She was a pragmatist in many ways. We would often discuss what impact a decision would have on people, not just the parties to the case, but people generally. More of a common sense approach sometimes. I think she was able to see sometimes beyond the law to what its practical implications were.
She was always looking at how the law worked, urging the court to restrain itself and not just go too far out. But at the same time, she was very concerned about individual rights and about justice for the particular people and entities that were before the court.
one of the salient characteristics of her opinions was pragmatism. She wanted to make sure that the rules and standards that were laid out in the opinions were achievable, well understood, clear, and basically laid out a blueprint or a roadmap for how in future cases those principles ought to be applied. I also remember she was the first chair of the Supreme Court Committee on Complementary Dispute Resolution, mediation, arbitration, which today is a huge, huge field.
She chaired committees about mediation and arbitration and their use in the courts, and was in many ways in the forefront of that movement.
And that, I think, is a reflection of her pragmatic side, that if the parties could be brought together to resolve a case without spending a lot of time and money to do that, and court resources, it was a beneficial thing for everyone involved.
When I first arrived at the court, Marie said to me, "There's someone you have to meet." And she arranged for Chief Judge Judith K to meet with us in a restaurant up on the Hudson River on the Jersey side. And we talked about the early years and what it was like, and we talked about how things had changed. They were women who took in stride what was happening and who managed to find either a way around the barriers or to just somehow dive right through.
She broke a barrier that I think now it's hard for, I would think, for young women in the practice of law to even imagine that that barrier existed, to fully appreciate how she changed the perception of the public and of the bar that women can be Supreme Court justices, judges, attorneys, and now we've seen such a transformation.
She was brilliant. I mean, in terms of her way that she was able to navigate all these difficult issues and be such a strong force in terms of women on the bench, I think in that sense she was a trailblazer.
It was very clear that she knew her place in history, but yet did not just make that the only thing she was about. She was about getting the work done, being a colleague, being a mentor. It was not the only thing that defined her at all.
I think there were opinions in which she was a trailblazer. There were 3 right-to-die cases that were very important, that had to do with our personal dignity and our right to make those kinds of very personal decisions for ourselves.
She also wrote, several opinions, including Toys R Us versus Lehman, which defined in New Jersey the standards for hostile work environment liability, and a number of other cases that she authored where her voice in that field became very powerful and enduring in terms of our fabric of law.
Ivy Club, Frank versus Ivy Club, which was, I believe, in 1990. It's a case that found that the eating clubs at Princeton University were public places of public accommodation and had to allow women to be members. I think it was a very important decision with respect to opening doors for women. It implemented the law against discrimination. It wasn't the court acting on its own interpretation of a statute, but it had a profound impact. And the fact that she was a woman, I think, the opinion spoke to that.
First of all, Hudson County was a huge part of her life, and she grew up and lived in Weehawken, I think, her entire life. She knew so many people in Hudson County, but she also was a very specific example of how Hudson County is a place where people all know each other, or people are very friendly, people are very down to earth. And so despite the fact that she was a justice of the Supreme Court of New Jersey, she could practically go anywhere in Hudson County and people would know her as Marie, because that was the kind of person she was.
On a personal level, one of my co-clerks spoke fluent Italian, and I took Italian in college for 4 years, and we tried very hard to teach Justice Garibaldi Italian. She really wanted to learn Italian. It was not her forte. Many lunch hours were spent teaching her a word or two or a sentence or two. Her Italian heritage was very important. It also influenced our lunch menu. We often went out for Italian food.
Warm, concerned, a delight to be with, friendly, always smiling and fun to be with. Justice Garibaldi was fun. She laughed, and the rest of us laughed with her.
Justice Murray Garibaldi died January 15, 2016. She served on the New Jersey Supreme Court from November 1982 through January 2000. Justice Murray Garibaldi, a trailblazer for women, a trailblazer in the law.